Hello, I'm Whalley, welcome to Lenscraft. I was fortunate to be invited recently to a pre-launch conference by DxO to view the new PhotoLab 3 software. They also provided access to a pre-launch trial of the software so I could make this video. If you're wondering has this influenced my review, I can assure you it hasn't. I'm an existing PhotoLab 2 user and I will be purchasing PhotoLab 3 upgrade with my own money. But back to this review and how it's structured. I'm starting by explaining why I personally use PhotoLab and what for. This is important because I can't use it for everything I'd like to, and it may not be right for you. If you're not already a PhotoLab user, I'd really recommend watching this section of the video first. After this, I'm going to demonstrate 4 new features in this release. After that, I'll be looking at the pricing information as I know it. Now be aware I'm doing this video before the release has gone out, so things could change. To help you find the relevant sections in the video, I'll include timings in the video information below. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm an existing DxO PhotoLab user, and before that DxO Optics Pro. I'd love to use the software for more than I do, but unfortunately I can't. You see, PhotoLab doesn't support the Fuji X-Trans sensor, and I shoot predominantly with a Fuji X-T3, and before that the X-T2. Despite this, I'll still be buying the upgrade for the software because the Fuji isn't my only camera. I also have an old Sony RX10 that I use, together with lots of RAW files from other cameras that the software does support. It's the way the software processes these RAW files that's so impressive. Let me demonstrate this to you with a RAW file from the Sony RX10. This is an image that I captured handheld at ISO 200 and an aperture of f3.2. It's a long exposure to handhold and the settings are less than optimal for the RX10. There was also a problem with this camera lens being soft down the left side and having a mould growth. Now this wasn't something I knew at the time and I only discovered it later and had to get the camera repaired. Despite these problems though, PhotoLab's made an excellent job of producing a very sharp and detailed image. If I zoom in to 1:1 magnification, you can see the centre of the image is really sharp and crisp. If I move to the right hand side, the brickwork is really well defined and lots of detail. It's only if I get down to the bottom left corner where you can see that the brickwork's gone a little bit soft because of the problems that I had with this camera. Now let's compare this to the best result that I could achieve processing this RAW file using Lightroom. As you can see, the Lightroom version's much softer. It's got also a faint haze across the image which you're not seeing in the PhotoLab version. If I look at the brickwork where it was nice and sharp in the top right, now it's just not as well defined. If I switch back to the RAW file you can see this quite obviously. Now what's great about PhotoLab is that most of the improvements in quality are automatic. If I click the compare button you can see the starting RAW file without any adjustments. Notice that it's not as clear and it has lots of lens distortion, which brings me on to my main reason for liking PhotoLab so much. Using this software, it's like upgrading your camera and lenses, but a fraction of the price. You're also able to apply this to old RAW files that you've already shot, so you can improve their quality as well. I've experienced it time and time again, where I've processed an old image in PhotoLab only to see enormous improvements in the quality. In fact, I realise I've sold cameras and lenses in the past that I thought weren't very good, and I've only come to find later that the images are excellent when I've processed them in PhotoLab. If you want to know more about this, I previously released a YouTube video demonstrating this. If you want to watch it, I'll put the details in the video information below. It's now time to look at some of the new features in PhotoLab 3. The first of these I want to talk about is keywording. Previously, if you wanted to find an image in PhotoLab, you'd need to browse through the thumbnails of all the images in your various folders. It was down to you to come up with a folder structure and naming that helped you find your images. This has all changed with the introduction of keywording. It's now possible to add keywords to your images, making it easy to search for them and find them again. For example, in this folder I have 3 images I shot in Bolivia. Because I've applied keywords to 2 of these, I can quickly find these 2 images with a search. Here you can see the search results for Bolivia has found a folder containing the word Bolivia and over 5,000 images. It's also found 2 images with the keywords Bolivia assigned to them. When I select this, you see only the 2 images with the keywords. If I now go back to my folder where I have my images, I can see a 3rd image that I shot in Bolivia and which needs the keyword adding. I can do this in the Customize tab. With my image selected, I can now assign the keyword Bolivia using this panel over on the left of the screen. When I start to type, any keywords in the database that match my typing are then displayed. I can either continue typing or I can select and add the keyword that's being displayed. If I want to enter a new keyword that's not in the database, you can just type it and press enter. The new keyword is then added to the image and it's added to the keyword database for future use with other images. If I want to edit the keyword that I've added, I can do this using the edit option. I can also delete the keyword using the delete option. Now the keywording feature in PhotoLab 3 is quite basic. I've seen quite a lot more advanced features in other platforms, but it delivers what most users really need. Using this, you're able to easily and quickly add keywords to your images. You can then search for these and display the images that match those keywords across your entire catalogue. Not everyone needs the features of hierarchical keywording with associated synonyms. It's sometimes much better to have something that's simple and that just works. The next new feature I want to talk about is the repair tool. The repair tool itself isn't a new feature, but it's been improved in PhotoLab 3. The previous version of PhotoLab has a reasonably effective repair brush, but it can be frustrating to use. Whilst it often makes good repairs, sometimes the repair is obvious, and that's because the area sampled by the software just doesn't work. If this happened, there was nothing you could do about it, you just had to try again. In this new version, we have much greater flexibility, which I'll demonstrate using this image of Gordell Scar in the Yorkshire Dales. Whilst the image shows the huge scale of the scar, a few distractions have crept in to the lower right hand corner of the frame. If we zoom in to 100%, we can move to that area and see the problems. Here we've got a couple of heads, and we also have a small child climbing up the rocks. Incidentally, I think this is a good image to show the performance of the software in processing the Sony RX10 RAW files. This image is razor sharp and absolutely packed with detail. You can select the repair tool from the toolbar at the top of the screen. With the repair tool active, you now see several options to control the brush rather than just the size of the brush. You can also now select between a repair brush, which will try to blend the repair you make into the image, or a clone tool which just copies different areas. You can also use the controls to size the brush, as well as control the feathering around the edge of the brush when the repair is made, and the opacity of the repair itself. I'm going to start by trying the repair brush to paint over the areas that I want to fix. In this example, the software's made a very good job of the repair and it's very difficult to detect it. If, however, this wasn't the case, we now have options to manually improve it. If we click this option to show the masks, we can now see where the repair is, as well as seeing where it's been sampled from. All I have to do is click one of the repairs. It's then possible to reposition this repair area to a different part of the image so that that's sampled and it improves the performance. This gives you a much greater control over the quality of your repairs, as well as fixing problems that may creep in. It's a lot less frustrating than the previous version. The next feature that I want to discuss is one of my favourite areas of PhotoLab, and that's local adjustments. If you're not familiar with how local adjustments work in PhotoLab, it's quite simple but extremely powerful. All you need to do is click the local adjustments button and you can then select an area to work on. PhotoLab has a range of tools you can use for making selections. You can choose these by right-clicking on the image with your mouse. This displays a tools palette with the different available tools to choose from. For example, I can select a graduated filter to make a selection of the sky with. When you've made your selection, you can then apply the individual adjustments to the area that's selected. Here, I might want to reduce the exposure of the sky and increase the contrast to bring it into balance with the rest of the image. I can also target individual tonal areas. For example, I might want to reduce the midtones in this image. I also find the clear view adjustment is a great way to intensify the sky in many photos. If you want to see the area you've selected again to check it, you can use the Show Mask option. In this example, I've made a selection of some of the areas that I don't really want to adjust, so you can see the rim of the volcano, for example, has been selected and is being affected by my adjustments. Even though it's only feathered, I still want to remove that area. I can use the eraser brush tool to make this cleanup. All I have to do is right-click and then select the eraser. Now I can clean up these edges. I'll also reduce the feather slightly so I'm working more precisely. Now I can just paint over these areas to make the clean. I've done that rather quickly and I would take more care normally, so I'll just hide this though, and you can see now I've made the adjustment. Now I want to display the new local adjustments panel in PhotoLab 3. I can do this using the menu option here and picking local adjustments. I've added it just below my histogram because that's where I like to see it. You can also add it in this Essential Tools area or any of the other panel areas that you've got in PhotoLab. Here you can see the graduated filter I've just applied, and you have the ability to turn that filter off and on to see the effect. If you've made it too strong, you can actually go and adjust the controls. I'm now going to add a new mask layer using the button at the bottom of the screen. And on that mask, I'm going to make a selection of this area at the bottom of the screen because I'm finding it just a little bit too dark. To do this, I'm going to use a control point, so I can right-click with my mouse, select the control point, and make my first selection. Now a control point is just another type of selection tool, and you'll find it in the Nick collection as well. I'm going to use this to position over the dark areas of the rock. If you want to see the area you're selecting, you can use the mask option here again. That shows me the selection in white that I'm making. I can now make my adjustments, and I'm going to increase the micro contrast because I just want to make these rocks pop a little bit more, and I also want to open up the exposure a little bit in those areas. I'll also pick the shadows from the tonal range and lighten those. So you can see that's now working quite well in that area, but it seems to have reduced the contrast, so I'll just boost that up as well. Clear view also can help improve areas like this, so I'll just try that. So overall that actually looks quite good now. Once I'm happy with my selection, I can now apply additional control points. Each control point that I add will make a selection and will apply the same adjustments to that area. Now I can resize individual control points, as I've done there, to make them select the rocks more accurately. Now it's quite possible that some of that adjustment is spilling over into these other areas. I can check it using the show masks, and it is. What I can do now is use a negative control point and just add that onto these areas to deselect them. And that just keeps my adjustments refined into this area. Now because all the control points are on the same area, they all share this same adjustment, apart from obviously the negative control points, which just remove the adjustment from that area. If I make further adjustments using this, you can see that they're applied to this area. If I now go back to my local adjustments panel, I can see the new control point and masks layer that I've added. I can then turn this off and on to check the adjustment I've just applied. Next, I'm going to target the more colourful areas of the volcanic crater by adding a new mask layer. As before, I'll start with a control point selection. Then I'll make my adjustments. When I'm happy with my adjustments, I then apply further control point selections. In the local adjustments panel, I can check that I'm happy with the overall effect of that layer. If I think I've made it too strong, I can adjust the opacity slider on that layer to adjust the intensity rather than going back and trying to fine-tune all the adjustments I've made. The opacity slider works on individual mask layers rather than on all the layers together, so this gives you a lot more control. Comparing the starting raw file with the adjustments we've made, we can see a substantial improvement that also appears quite natural. Now all the individual adjustments that I've just demonstrated were in the previous version of PhotoLab. What PhotoLab 3's done though is tie them all together into a coherent system of layers and giving you control over that with the local adjustments panel. I personally feel this layering of local adjustments is a major improvement in the software, but I still think there are a lot of enhancements they could add to this. For example, being able to rename individual layers as well as mix different types of adjustment on the same mask. You could also improve this by making the Nick collection add new adjustment layers just as you do with this, But of course those are new enhancements that could be added in the future. I really do hope that DxO continues to develop this feature in future releases of PhotoLab, because I think it's very, very powerful. The final new feature of PhotoLab 3 that I want to talk about is the redesign of the HSL tool. If you're not familiar with HSL, it stands for Hue, Saturation and Luminance. The tool allows you to adjust each of these three colour components separately. In PhotoLab 2, the HSL adjustment will look like this. Now in PhotoLab 3, it looks like this. Let's look at how this works using this image of the Bolivian salt flats at sunset. I've already made some adjustments to the image to correct overexposure and a couple of other things. The image is now more as I remember, however the pink at the time appeared much more vivid and intense than it does here. I can use the HSL adjustment to target and correct this. Along the top of the control you'll see that there are a number of different colour ranges you can select. Notice these aren't all the same size and have been carefully selected by DxO to give you a good starting point for editing. However, you can also adjust the default colour ranges if you want to. It's possible to click and drag a control to reposition it on the colour wheel in order to target different colours. If I increase the saturation to the maximum level, it'll make it easier to see the targeted area on the image. I can also make the colour range wider by clicking and dragging one of the inner points. Notice that we also have an outer adjustment area to the selection. This controls the blending or the transition zone of the adjustment, so here I'm widening the transition range to improve blending. When I'm happy, I can return my saturation to a more sensible level. But the real beauty of this control comes when we want to change the colour. I can easily move the selected colours towards a different colour. It's also possible to pick and adjust multiple colours separately. But what I really like about the HSL tool can only be seen when you zoom in to a close one-to-one magnification. Notice how the adjustment is very precise and there isn't any bleed to adjacent colours. To better appreciate this, let's look at a different image. I haven't made any adjustments to this image, so for simplicity I'm just going to use the Clear View Plus adjustment at the default intensity. Now I'll select the orange and yellow of the grass and turn it red. Let's now zoom in and examine some of the areas where we have the snow and also the sky meeting the grass. If you look carefully, there's absolutely no colour bleed between areas where the colours have been changed. As we continue to change the colour of the grass, there's still no bleed. This is a powerful tool and it could save you a lot of time where you want to adjust colours in your image with great precision. It's also a great improvement on the old HSL tool in PhotoLab 2. But if anyone from DxO is watching, I have a request. Could you please add a tonal range selector onto the HSL panel as well? It would be nice to be able to target the adjustments onto shadows, midtones and highlights separately. That would make for an extremely powerful and flexible tool, but I am very impressed by the control of the new HSL tool. It really is an excellent improvement. Now we've reviewed the changes in PhotoLab 3, let's talk about something very important, and that's the price. Unlike some software companies, DxO has resisted the temptation to move to a subscription model, which should appeal to a lot of people. This does mean there's a large initial investment, but you can continue to use the software without additional expense. It's only when you come to upgrade, if you want to, that you'll find there's an additional cost for the upgrade. You also need to understand that the PhotoLab software comes in two versions, which are the Essential and Elite. In PhotoLab 2, the difference between the two was that the Elite version has additional tools and allows for the activation on 3 rather than 2 computers. If you're considering PhotoLab 3 as a new user, do check the different versions on the DxO website in order to find the best one for you before purchasing. In terms of cost, the full version of PhotoLab 3 is £169, which is the same as for PhotoLab 2. But if you're purchasing the software before the 24th of November 2019, you can benefit from a special launch price. This reduces the cost for the Elite version down to £129.99. If you want the full Essential version of PhotoLab 3, the launch deal reduces the price from £112 down to £86.99. If you're an existing user and considering an upgrade as I am, then you can take advantage of a special launch price as well. I even understand there's a special launch price for users of PhotoLab 2 Essentials who want to upgrade to PhotoLab 3 Elite. If you have the PhotoLab 2 Essentials as a result of buying the Nick Collection 2, this may be of interest to you. Which brings up the question of what happens with the Nick Collection 2. Currently this comes with PhotoLab 2 Essentials Edition. It's my understanding that this will continue. But irrespective of the pricing and the features I've talked about, there's one step I recommend for everyone. Just because I'm impressed with PhotoLab 3 and the image quality, it doesn't mean the software is going to be right for you. Download the trial version from the DxO website before buying and try it out for yourself. You need to try it for a few days or even a few weeks before you can make a reasonable decision. That way you know if it meets your needs or not. I hope you've enjoyed my review. I'm Whalley, you've been watching Lenscraft. I'll see you next week for another video.